Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Unbound. I'm Nicola Humber, author of Unbound and founder of the Unbound Press. And today I am beyond excited, really, to be joined by Jennifer Booker, who is the author of the first ever Unbound Press release, The New Normal, coming out as transgender in midlife. I have my copy here. I was more excited to get my copy of this book than I was when either of my own two books came out. It is so exciting to hold it in my hands. So hopefully, Jennifer, you're just as excited.
It's been pretty amazing, yes.
Fantastic. So Jennifer and I connected for the first time just over a year ago. We were both taking part in Mama Gina's Mastery event in New York, which is a program, a process that takes place over 3 weekends, kind of in the spring, summer in New York City. And yeah, Jennifer and I were both part of that, along with many, many other sister goddesses, a wonderful sister goddess community. And when I launched the Unbound Press, Jennifer was like, I've got this book. I've got this manuscript. Like, you know, can I publish it with you? And of course, after speaking to her, the answer was yes, because it is such an amazing story that you've got, Jennifer, and a really important story that's shared. So I'm so honored that you chose the Unbound Press to publish through.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I was just so happy because I'd been working on the book off and on for ever since about 2016 when I started writing it. And so I'd work on it for a little bit really intensely and then go back to doing work for 6 months. And then I'd work on it again. And so it was sort of this on again, off again thing. And so I finally was going, I kept trying to find a publisher and I kept trying all the traditional routes. And of course, without having already been published, you can't be published. So that's a wonderful problem. And it was like, okay, so I kind of gave up on those routes and I just figured I'd wait and see if something better came along. And this turned into the perfect opportunity to work with a sister goddess and be unbound and share with the world.
It's absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And we are anything but traditional at the Unbound Press. So I'm glad that you that it was perfect timing for both of us. Absolutely. So Jennifer, obviously the theme of these conversations and all of the work that I do is about being unbound. But I generally kick off by asking the same question because I'm curious to know if a time in your life comes to mind or a situation in your life where you felt particularly bound in the past and how you moved beyond that. What comes to mind?
Lots of them, actually.
Yeah.
The first one that came to mind was my marriage. And it started off looking, okay, this might be really promising. This has some potential. This could be really good. And then it started diving downhill slowly, very, very slowly. One little piece at a time, kept falling away. And it got to the point where my now ex-wife was actively keeping me from communicating with my family, discouraging me to have any outside interests, all these classic abusive behaviors. And I knew it was bad. I knew it was horrible, and I didn't see any way out of it. And so it got to the point where I was considering all sorts of extreme measures to try to get out of the situation. And I finally said, okay, well, I'll just go find a counselor to talk to for a sanity check. And I started talking to this counselor over at the University of Pennsylvania. And I thought, gee, I must sound like the dumbest person ever to walk the face of the earth. And so it's like, yeah, I was in exactly that classic, abusive relationship problem. And then it's like, yeah, so I finally broached the subject with my biological family and said, hi, I'm thinking about getting divorced. And they said, what can we do to help? We'll do anything. What do you need?
Wow.
Because my ex had completely alienated everybody in my family, and they completely despised her for lots of good reasons. And so they helped me get out, and they provided the resources. They loaned me a huge amount of money so that I could get an apartment while I was still paying 2 mortgages on our house, and and managed that transition until I got out of the house and got the house sold, and all these kinds of things that made it possible for me to get away. Um, and
Wow.
that freedom and that claiming of my space partly led to my eventual coming out about a year or two later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so kind of bound in lots of different ways. I mean, very often during these conversations, people will speak about a particular relationship where they felt bound. And, well done you for asking for support and, from your biological family and from a counselor actually saying, no, I'm kind of recognizing that I need some help here because it's not always easy to do. So, what an
Yeah,
amazing, go on.
I was going to say, yeah, because even as I was going to the counselor, I thought, I know exactly what they're going to say, but I still had to hear it from somebody else. I still had to hear it from an independent source that said, yeah, this is not an acceptable situation to leave yourself in.
Mhm.
And you hear some steps. And I got advice from my stepmother, for example, for contacting a lawyer right away and all this other stuff, and moving out of the house as soon as possible. And I got all this advice from people that's like, okay, now that I was able to face the fact that this was an untenable situation, what do I do next? And work my way through all those steps of getting things out of the house that were valuable to me, and stashing stuff into storage and all these kinds of things. Like, okay, if I have to absolutely move out tomorrow, what stuff is irreplaceable that I want to get out of the house to protect and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was a systematic process, but the hardest part, of course, was the first step, and realizing that
absolutely.
you absolutely had to do something to change it.
Yeah. And like you say, that step um led to, well, created the space for you to come out, like within, like you said, 1 or 2 years of leaving the marriage. And obviously this is a process you talk about in the book, Jennifer, but tell us a bit more about that process of having this realization, because it kind of happened quite suddenly. It seems like from reading the book. It's like,
Yeah,
oh.
I find it funny because it's like, you hear these stories Jenner and all these people that knew for 20 years, 30 years, and didn't do anything about it. They knew that they were transgender, but it was an awkward situation if you're, this role model for the world, and suddenly saying, by the way, I'm also a woman. And so in
Mhm.
my case, it was through body work that my reveal came to me. Um, and so I was working on authentic self-expression, and I was trying to find better ways of understanding myself, communicating with my own body. And this lady came out from Arizona that was a body worker, and she worked on focusing on things that you said about yourself. Like, I kept referring to myself as a cripple, and it's like, no, you're not a cripple. That's not a message that applies anymore. Maybe it did at one point in your life. It's not true anymore. And so she was also trying to work on survival things that you had done in the moment that you had to do to survive that moment, but you didn't need them anymore, and you wanted to get rid of them from your life. And so part of the process was recovering from the challenges of my childhood when I was in and out of hospitals and stuff like that. And then once we got past that layer, she was asking this really weird question of, "Who are you?" And I thought, God, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard in my life. and and so I gave the name I'd always been using, and she said, "And you're that, and sometimes you're," and she left it blank. I thought, where is this going? I don't understand. And so it was really baffling. I'm going, and the only thing that came to mind was Jennifer. And
Wow.
so I said it out loud for the first time that sometimes I'm Jennifer. And I'm going, this sounds, no, this can't be true. This is ridiculous. There's no way this is true. This
And
is
this
some
was the first time that you'd had this, like consciously had this realization.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. That was the moment that Jennifer first emerged, and it was April 5th, 2013. We just had the
Incredible.
anniversary for it, which is now
Yeah.
coincidentally my sister's birthday. So we both have a birthday on the same day. Um,
Amazing.
and and so I have no idea what happened the rest of that session because my mind was going, this is ridiculous. This can't be true. This is just some new age BS. Nah. And then having done body work before, having studied massage therapy and things like that, I checked in with my body. How is my body responding to this idea? And my shoulders had opened up and then dropped, and I could breathe more easily, and I felt energy moving more freely. And it's like, oh, shit. This is true. Boy, this is going to be hard to explain to my parents. And
Wow.
so I sat with it for basically a couple of months, trying to figure out, is this real? Because, it was literally unthinkable to come out as transgender. Because when I was a kid, the only person you ever heard of that was transgender was like some tennis player who went to Denmark for a sex change operation, and that was it. That was like, yeah, that's the entire image of transgender that I
Mhm.
had growing up. And so it's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. I would never do that. That's insane. Well, things change, and I could have been wrong.
Wow. Wow.
And
So
so
what was
what's that?
go on, go on, go on.
So that was the foundation of the whole thing, and that was the beginning of. That was the first time I recognized myself as transgender, and struggled with the argument between my body and my mind of my mind saying, "No, that's ridiculous. That can't be true," and my body saying, "Uh huh,
Yeah. And your body always knows,
yes,
doesn't it? Always.
yes."
We can try and argue with our bodies, but it will always.
The body can't lie, and
It
that's one of
can't.
the things I learned from body work. It was like, yeah, your body cannot lie. It's impossible,
Yeah.
and so that's why I was kept going back to it as the arbiter to decide. Wait, is this really true? And
Mhm.
and then I started piecing together the history of the things in the past that had when you had little hints going on all the time, but you didn't put all the pieces together until now.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. Incredible. So what was the process like afterwards, Jennifer, after you've had this realization and you've been checking in with your body and it's like, okay, I'm not just making this up. This
Yeah.
is true.
This is not just some weird little game trick, whatever mind
No.
thing. Um, and so I had been working with locally with Monica Day, and she was my life coach, and so I'd been working on her with authentic self-expression, mostly through writing, and so that's part of what became the foundation of the book was the fact
Mm.
that I'd been doing all this writing before I even came out to myself. And then throughout the entire process of coming out to different at different levels and going through transition, I kept writing and giving presentations at the erotic literary salon here in Philadelphia, and that body of work became the foundation for a lot of what's in the book because I had been thinking about it and seeing in the moment exactly what was I thinking, what was I feeling, what was I doing, how are people responding, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, holy cow, I have all of this stuff, and maybe I could create a book out of this. And sure enough. so
Absolutely.
so yeah, so the first level was basically coming out to my immediate friends in Philadelphia and of course they were mostly very receptive. I had a weird little bit with, I was in an LGBT tennis league, and they were kind of weird about it when I started wearing skirts, because skirts are a lot of fun, and and it's fun to say too.
Yeah, it is. It's fun to hear. It's a great word.
And I think the problem there was simply that the tennis league was like over 95% gay men. And I think they were a little bit challenged by the concept of how could you possibly not want to be identified as a man? I don't
How
understand.
dare you?
So I kind of wandered away. I still keep in touch with a few people from there, but then yeah. So I even within about 2 weeks, I gave another presentation at the salon, and I wrote a letter to Jennifer, and
Mm.
I included that in the book. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, what is this about? What does this feel like? And where's this going? And so I was also coincidentally taking classes on things like gender studies, and that was amazing to have that going on at the same time. At one point, I believe I was also taking a class on abnormal psychology. So I was learning all about the DSM-5. Oh, good, I can look up my own symptoms.
Everything just kind of
Yeah,
feeding into the
and
experience.
so after a while, I said, okay, this is real. This is something that's not just a passing whimsy or fluke or something like that. And so I decided to start going on hormone therapy, and that was a lot of fun. Because I didn't know your boobs get more sensitive when you go on hormone therapy. And it's like, oh wow, that's really fun. Um, I enjoyed these secondhand before, but wow, having your own is really wonderful. What can
Oh,
I say? Easily entertained.
yeah.
And,
Mm.
um, and then I started considering whether or not I was going to try to do gender confirmation surgery, and that was a huge, huge step to even consider. Uh,
Mhm.
and I also started facing up to the fact of some people found out that I was coming out as transgender on Facebook and changing my name here. But then I was also considering, well, when do I come out to my family? When do I come out at work? And so these different levels of friends and family and work were all very, very different levels to try to go through the coming out process. Uh,
Mhm.
so work at the time was very supportive. I even checked all the laws and regulations locally to make sure that I was not too vulnerable to just getting fired for coming out,
Yeah.
which is a weird thing to have to look up. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's a very sad thing in the world to have to look up. I mean, there's, and
Mhm.
I later on did research and found that, of course, there are many places in the world, even for being a homosexual, you can be executed. I think there were just a bunch of people in Saudi Arabia that were just killed the other day because they were gay
It's
or they were
horrific.
suspected of being gay, and that was enough to chop their heads off.
Uh,
And that's just a terrifying concept. I
it
mean,
is.
I want to go on vacation. Some beautiful places in the world, I won't go simply because it would be too dangerous for me to be there. And
Yeah.
that's bizarre and ridiculous and insane, but
Yeah.
that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
go ahead.
Go on. Go ahead.
But yeah, so I started considering going through confirmation surgery. Fortunately, there was something called the Transgender Health Conference being held every year in Philadelphia because it's sponsored by somebody locally. And so I went to presentations on that and got the lowdown on, okay, what's the state of the art for doing such things now, and decided to go ahead and sign up to get that done. And so yeah, and of course, being the state of healthcare in the United States,
Mm.
yeah, right, I had to pay for it out of cash, and so it wasn't covered at all by insurance except for like prescriptions or something like that. It's like, oh, good, you covered $300 worth of stuff. I'll go pay the $20,000 now for the surgery out of my pocket.
Wow.
So yeah, I keep hoping we'll have socialized medicine someday.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That would be helpful. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was the big step after that. And once I had the magic piece of paper from my doctor that said it's a girl, then I could go ahead and I did the whole name change process and getting the gender marker changed, as they call it, the M or F on your ID. And
Hmm.
so it led into that whole process. And since I was writing and keeping all these records, because I'm a little bit of an electronic pack rat, I had all of this stuff. And then a year after I finished the name change, I sat down and looked at all this and went, there might be a book in here. It's like, I don't know,
Yeah, it just might be.
how big is a book? And I started looking up, how big is a book? How many words are in a book? And it's like, oh, 50 to 100,000. Okay, I might squeak 50,000 out of it. Well, I'm a little chattier than that, apparently.
Well, what I love about the book, Jennifer, is, you know, you take us through the whole process, and you talk about your early life and everything kind of building up to this realization. And then you take us right through, you know, the whole process that you've experienced. And I think it's so kind of helpful and important for people to be able to read about this, you know, to know what's involved. Like, you know, you go into so much detail, and it's fascinating. And it's also very important for people who are maybe thinking about going through the same process, or have friends or family who are going through the process, or, you know, you've already heard from counselors who are working with transgender clients who are like bought your book because it's like, I want to know, I need to know more about this. So thank you so much for writing it and actually taking the time to put it all down, because there's so much in there. I mean, it's a I don't know, there's not one word to describe it, but it's just such a great story. You're such a great storyteller, but the level of detail you go into as well, it just, like I've been telling everyone, it's a must read for
Thank
everyone.
Yeah, as time went on, the fact that I kept coming back to it, I would sometimes put little notes aside to myself, like, "Oh, there's a story here you need to throw in," and then I go, "Okay, what chapter does that belong in? Okay, what section does that belong in?" And so I just kept adding little bits and pieces over the years as I was, adding to it and keep building the story. And so, for example, one of the last things I wrote was a whole section in the end on the relationship between sex work and burlesque, because
Mm.
I got involved in the burlesque community as another form of authentic self-expression, a really fun one for those of you who are exhibitionists out there. And and so then I started seeing connections between the world of sex work, which you usually think of as things like prostitution and street working and things like that. But some people were also saying, well, if you're doing burlesque, does that count as sex work? You're being sexy and you're getting paid for it. Does that count? And so there was all sorts of interesting discussions going on at levels like that too, because some of the people who are doing burlesque are also doing like webcam shows, or they're exotic dancers or something else like that. So they're doing other related things that are sometimes also considered sex work. And it's like,
Mhm.
so it's like the whole discussion on details like that. Um, but yeah, it was so much fun. I think there's still like, one or two little tiny microscopic things that I've realized, like, oh wait, did I remember to talk about X? And I'm going, I don't know. At this point, I just have to go in and search the document because it's so big. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to find anything after this many sections.
You get so kind of lost in your own book sometimes. It's like, I just need a little bit of distance from that. Maybe you'll have to write another book, Jennifer. I think enjoy this one first.
Before I start that one.
But what I love as well is, you know, you're asking all of these kind of questions throughout the book. You're inviting the reader to kind of reflect on their own experience and their own beliefs, like right the way through, which is really, really powerful. And I wonder what it's like for you. I mean, I know it's only been like literally a week since it's actually been out there in the world, but what's it like to have your book kind of going out there and doing its magic in the world?
Well, I think some of the magic is still sort of waiting for people to finish getting through it.
It's like, come on, read it.
It's like it is a bit of a long read. I mean, I spoke to my mom yesterday, and it was funny because she got an early copy, and she claims to have read it in 5 hours. I'm going, she's not a fast reader. I don't know how she got through that in 5 hours. I don't think I could read it in 5 hours, and I wrote it. Um,
What did she think about it?
Parts of it that were just too detailed.
Yeah. She was like, I'm going to skim over this bit.
Yeah, let's skip over that part. Okay, we don't need to read about all the different drugs that you're not supposed to take before surgery. Yeah, she was actually fine with it. She made what she thought were some corrections about some of the historical stuff and the autobiographical stuff in the beginning. But overall, the funniest part was that she said, well, she was going to get a copy of it for the local library. She's out near St. Louis, near my brother. And then after reading the stuff that had happened with my brother, she said, I think I'll hold off on that and wait and see if he thinks it's okay to put it in the library, because somebody might make the connection that he works locally and he could get in trouble for what he said. It's like, well, you put it out on the internet.
Well, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
my brother had a very vicious response to me about a year and a half ago, where he published an article in a very, very conservative website that said basically why he would never address me by the correct name or pronoun. And he said point blank that he knew he was being transphobic and dead naming me and all these other terrible things that you're not supposed to do to people.
Mm-hmm.
Blatantly doing them. So let the chips fall where they may. I wrote in the very beginning when I was first coming out, and I thought this has such huge implications because I could lose friends over it. I could lose family members over it. I could lose my job. I could lose my life if somebody gets really offended. There have been people who've been killed for being transgender.
Yeah.
And so coming out and being open about being transgender was not a trivial decision at all for those reasons. And after I came out to my family, two of my cousins and my brother both wrote these long essays telling me how this was not the right thing to do and it wasn't who I was. Now, bear in mind, I've never been close to my brother and I hadn't seen my cousins in 30 years. And they wrote these long letters telling me that they know me better than I know myself. That's like, wow, that's some amazing hubris you have there.
Absolutely. I love the way you responded, though, Jennifer. It's like, and again, this is in the book. You kind of go through point by point responding to them.
My favorite one was my brother included in the letter that he wrote, the early one, not the recent one. That he included this cartoon where somebody had strapped a fin on their back as if they were pretending to be a dolphin. So he was comparing being transgender to someone who thinks they're a dolphin. It's like, what? Or he also made the analogy in his letter in, what was it, The Guardian or something like that, I think was the name of it. No, The Federalist, I think it was. The Federalist was. And he made the analogy in there that, well, he likes to cook, and that's traditionally associated with being a feminine activity, but it's okay. It doesn't mean that he's transgender because he likes to cook. And I thought, so a hobby is equal in your mind to your gender identity? I don't think so.
But it's great that you've included all of this in the book because, other people who are going through a similar or same process could be experiencing this kind of like, not even feedback, but criticism and kind of being shut down by their friends and families and their responses. So the fact that you're actually sharing it, like really openly and kind of taking us through the way you've kind of come back against.
Here are the hurdles that I've jumped over in order to get where I am. You may face similar hurdles.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think that's going to give people in lots of different ways kind of courage to keep moving forwards and feel supported, like through reading your book and reading about your experiences. And, you know, one of the things, well, probably the thing I'm most passionate about with the Unbound Press is for women to be sharing their stories, because when we do that, you know, we give kind of courage to others, and we give permission to other women to do the same. So I'm so grateful that you were the first Unbound Press book to be released. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Jennifer?
Well, yesterday I just quit my job. After 20 years of teaching computer stuff, computer science and IT and all this other stuff, thanks to Mastery as well, I realized that that's not really a happy track for me. I can do it, pays well, there's demand for it, but it's not satisfying.
Yeah.
And so in about 2 weeks, I'm starting a full-time program for 1 whole year, woohoo, to get a bachelor's degree in nursing and go into a nursing track. And so doing my 3rd career.
Yeah. You're a Renaissance woman, aren't you?
You know, just keep trying new stuff, and whatever works, keep it, and whatever doesn't, try something else.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
The funniest part for me of the whole process of going through transition and all this stuff was the fact that I had to get letters from doctors to prove I was crazy enough to be a woman. And I still find that hysterical. So I included the body of those letters, because it's like, what exactly does a letter look like that says you're crazy enough to be a woman? Well, here you go. Here's 2 examples.
All of the evidence is there. And oh, Jennifer, honestly, and you know, I always say these during these conversations, but like especially with you, there's other things that I would love to kind of dive into and talk with you about. So I'm sure we will get you on for another conversation, because I'd really like to kind of talk about our experience of working with Mama Gina and Mastery and sisterhood, and also, you know, the way you talk about passing in the book as well, which I think is a really interesting conversation. So we will definitely kind of get you on again and dive into all of that. Fantastic. But in the meantime, I recommend that everybody get themselves a copy of The New Normal. It is like, you've just had a little taster of it today, and it is such an incredible book. It's available on Amazon now, so go ahead and get it. And wishing you really well, Jennifer, with your nursing training and whatever comes next. And
thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you're doing in the world, really.
Thank you. Thank you for being so supportive and for creating the Unbound Press.
It was a match made in heaven. So
yeah, right.
A match made in Mastery. So oh, well, thank you, Jennifer, and we'll see you again soon for another episode.
All right. Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.